guys, you've just caught me in the middle of cooking up a new video.
Oh, seriously?
This is Maik's Music Month, where I present to you what I've been listening to this month. The start of the year is always defined by miserable weather, the post-Christmas lull, and generally nobody having a good time at all. So you can imagine what I've been listening to. Jazz. It's lots and lots of jazz. First off, I want to recommend Trust in the Life Force of the Deep Mystery. It's from that video that I uploaded a couple of weeks back. You can go and watch that by clicking whichever one of these corners I put the tag in. You'll notice actually in that video that my hair is more similar to this. I've had it cut between the one I filmed earlier this year and that one, although I suppose it looks like it's progressed in a linear fashion, so I didn't need to explain this. The album I've been listening to a lot this month is Jesse Volume 3 by Jacob Collier. If you get a lot of music from YouTube or are interested in jazz in general, there is no doubt that you've heard of Jacob Collier. He's won however many Grammys, any more than one is impressive frankly, and he's won a whole bunch of them. And this album is Jesse Volume 3. It's the most recent thing he's released apart from a voice memo as part of a new EP he's put out, because we live in a world where people can do that now. And it's the third entry in a quadrilogy. I think he was originally going to put all of them out in maybe 2019, but I fully understand why maybe a marketing person would have said, hey, if you've got 4 albums written, maybe don't put them all out in a year. He was quite clear on the structure of them before he put them out. The first one's got a lot of orchestral pieces and sort of what you might call more traditional jazz. The second one was mostly a selection of folk tunes, which for someone who doesn't really like folk, I wasn't hugely interested in, although there are some nice bits on there. And this one, even when he first announced it, was the one I was most excited about. He promised it would be the one with the most electronic elements, bringing in a bit of like an R&B vibe, but obviously with the sort of signatures that he's putting on it, I feel fairly justified in calling it jazz. Just to choose a few highlights, I thought I'd start off with the opener, Clarity. It's not really a song, it's sort of this sound collage thing, which, you know, I'm an arsehole. Obviously I love that. This one's particularly clever in that it's got lots of little interpolations and samples for tracks that will later appear on the album, so you get a nice little bit of what I suppose you could call musical foreshadowing there, but it just means that with repeated listens of the album, you listen back to this track and you're like, oh, that's going to happen again later. It's kind of like when comedians do a joke and then they circle back to it later on, but in reverse. Although I have no idea why that's so funny, but it always is. It always is. They say something and then you as the audience just go, oh, I heard this from before. My personal favourite track from it is Time Alone With You featuring Daniel Caesar. It was the first single that was released from the album, and I've got to say, after not quite getting into the groove of Jesse Volume 2, like I said earlier, because it was primarily folk, this one really got my hopes up for the new album, and to be honest, I think those hopes were entirely justified. It's got this kind of R&B vibe for most of it, which is just so kind of like slinky, I guess I'd call it, that it's very cool. It's very cool indeed. Maybe too cool for me. You start with these almost call and response type vocals between Daniel Caesar and Jacob Collier, who in my notes is listed as JC. He's good. I don't know if he's Jesus Christ levels of good. The whole song sort of moves along with this drunk feel to it, where, you know, the beat is unquantized, like. So it's just by moving that hi-hat back slightly, you get this nice kind of rolling sensation as you move through the track. The best example of this sort of beat ever being used would obviously be Voodoo by D'Angelo, if you want an earlier example, which also I'd like to recommend. But you know, a lot of people have talked about that album already, so I'll leave that. Later, towards what I suppose you would call the bridge if you're trying to jam this into a traditional song structure, it moves to this weird choral bit, but with, you know, glitchy drums, and it just goes a bit mad, to be honest, which I really like, but I think with Jacob Collier's music does turn a lot of people off. The day I'm recording this, actually, there was a thread on, I think, Ask Music on Reddit about him, and one comment just said, it's like no one's ever told him the phrase less is more, and I appreciate why some people don't like that, but you know, it butters my crumpet. After the glitchy bit, it goes into what I suppose you might call jazz. If you were to think of like a stereotypical jazz instrumental, this would be it. It's got the really fast walking bass, you know, that sort of thing. It's got what I suppose you could describe as the jazz drum beat, although obviously it's played a bit faster than maybe the more traditional. I don't know why I'm doing this with my hands. I can't play the drums, and like, you're supposed to cross, I think, and there's no snare in it as far as I was doing it, but yeah, that's how you play drums. I want to quickly talk about the third single from the album, All I Need, if only because if you listen to this song, the synths will be in your head forever. It sounds much better than that on the record, but I would recommend this track maybe second from top. I also just want to touch on the closer. I'm not counting To Sleep just because I feel that sort of serves as more of a coda. It sort of comes right at the end. It's like a little palate cleanser. I wouldn't call it a song in its own right, or in many ways it could just be tacked on to the end of what I'm viewing as the proper closer, He Won't Hold You. When people first started hearing about Jacob Collier, it was for these vocal arrangements that he'd post on YouTube, and I would say in terms of what makes him unique, that's almost the backbone of his sound, and we get that here. The whole song really is just built off of him just singing this line. Obviously there's loads of other harmonies going on there, but this is just a review of it rather than a recreation. The song also boasts a really lovely spoken word part from Rhapsody, although I do notice I'm mentioning spoken word a lot despite having claimed in the last video that I don't like spoken word. Maybe it's specifically spoken word over jazz, but in any case, as I said last time, drop me some spoken word recommendations down there and I'll give them a go. Either way, whether or not you love or hate spoken word, He Won't Hold You and To Sleep are just an absolutely beautiful pair of tracks to end on. In fact, almost the polar opposite of my worst moment from the album. There was going to have to be one. In the first track, Count the People, Jacob, who is very well spoken, does something that I suppose you would describe as rapping. And I don't know, man. Maybe this was an experiment, and maybe it's an experiment that doesn't need to be repeated. Despite that one little blip, I would otherwise say that this is an album that I've listened to multiple times all the way through, which for me is basically the mark of a good album. If you're in the mood for a little bit of sort of jazz-influenced R&B with some nice moments and some quirky little bits, then go give it a listen. It will, as always, be added to the Maik's Musical Month playlist. My favourite EP this month, again carrying on weirdly with the YouTube jazz theme, is Sungazer. It's one of two EPs that Adam Neely and Sean Crowther, both YouTubers, project Sungazer, has put out. The main reason that I rank it above the second one is essentially that the second one was already songs that had been available on YouTube for quite a long time, majoritively. Off of that EP, if you're going to listen to anything, do check out Drunk. I think it's really good, and there's a YouTube video that explains the timing in it, which if you're into music theory, you really should watch because it's really interesting. My top three moments on the original Sungazer EP have got to be starting with the bass shredding in Sequence Start. It was something that I assume a lot of people heard in the backgrounds or credits section of Adam Neely videos, and it just goes so fucking hard, man. I can barely even hum it right, so it's really just, in terms of the precision of the playing, it's definitely worth checking out. Also, it just sounds fucking cool. Along with my second favourite moment, which is I Walk Alone in its entirety. Jay Soto does some really good vocals, as she always does, but to me this track just comes down to the fact that there's loads of glitchy shit happening in the background. Like I said about the intro to Jacob Collier's album, I love a bit of glitch. I can't get enough. If it sounds like the computer that you're rendering the audio on is breaking, then yeah, send that shit my way. And rounding off my top three favourite moments on this EP is 44 seconds into Dreams of Mahjong. It somehow gets both heavier and more expansive at the same time. You can really feel the world of the track just opening out, and it's really pretty good. I'd also like to give an honourable mention to the bass solo in this track, because it's a bass solo. I'm a bassist, okay? Please just let me have this one. And finally, I'd just like to quickly touch on my favourite single that I've been listening to a lot this month. It's New Heights / Snitches Brew by Kamal Williams. Honestly, New Heights I don't really listened to that much, but Snitch's Brew more than makes up for it on this double A side. If you imagine On the Run by Pink Floyd, who, if it's 4 weeks from the date this video I've posted, you can find another video about by clicking there. This is kind of like that, On the Run, but more jazz. And more jazz, especially when I'm doing Maik's Musical Month Jazzuary edition, can only possibly make things better. But that's all I've got for you this week, guys. If you have listened to any of these, do let me know what you thought down in the comments, or if there's anything similar that you'd like me to check out, hey, bang it all down there. Also, don't forget to subscribe and give this one a like, because it does really help. But yeah, see you in the next one. Just to choose a few highlights. 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 I thought I'd start off.